A very good morning, and thank you for joining us today on this talk about hybrid working. My name is Cyril Parsons. I'm the Managing Director of Office Principles. We are workplace consultants, we're interior designers, and we're project managers. I like to think of our role is to help organizations make intelligent and research-based decisions about where to invest their time, their money, and their resources for the best possible staff outcomes, for best business performance and most significant impact. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But in reality, it's not. So there's a lot of rhetoric out there about hybrid, what it is and what it isn't. And I'd like to think today that we're going to try and untangle a few of those myths. I'll start by giving you a few generalizations. As our research, we've worked with thousands of staff and hundreds of organizations in the past 24 months. And with our data, we've actually found that over 85% of staff now tell us that they want some form of hybrid arrangement. And right now in the questions of minds of leadership teams, CEOs, etc., is what hybrid actually means. We read about leaders and management trying to encourage their staff to get back to work. And the government's even got a return to work minister. And my advice here is we need to be really careful because the war on top talent is so intense that we could end up losing staff if we insist on fixed, rigid hours or a 5-day-a-week return to work. One company that seems to have made a little bit of a mess of this is Apple. You can Google this, so it's all in the public domain. I'm not trying to degenerate them, but they've implemented a form of hybrid working for their 165,000 employees on the basis of 3 fixed days a week, namely Monday, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's caused a real upset with staff. Some of them feel really disrespected. There's an article on the Fortune website, and they've done a survey of Apple staff, and they say that 76% of Apple staff were unhappy with that decision. And let me repeat this, 56% reported that they were actually considering quitting Apple to find a more flexible employer. So that's a lot of negativity around their strategy or that particular strategy for agile working. So a few statistics for you from that data. Firstly, most staff can't see any logic really in, say, a 1-hour commute to the office only to sit at a desk when they've got a perfectly good desk at home. It seems to make a lot of sense to me. Secondly, when staff do go to the office, they're all looking for rooms to do their Zoom calls or their Teams calls. In fact, our audits show that 86% of the time, meeting rooms are occupied by just one person. So that's a really crazy waste of space. And thirdly, there's a lot of angst around staff with technology and acoustics, particularly in meeting rooms. When you think about it, we could call a meeting. We could have staff that are in the room. We could have staff in the room, but on a separate screen. Then we could have staff in another room in the same building, joining on a separate screen. And finally, we could have staff joining remotely from home or from their Starbucks. And that means the tech and the acoustics need to be really carefully considered and very intuitive. So we at Office Principles think that the hybrid office needs to be designed a bit more like event space. Staff will still go into the office, but they'll go there for specific events. They'll go there for meetings, for collaborations, for mentoring, performance reviews, perhaps, team sessions. And therefore, the office needs to be really flexible. It needs to be tech-led. It needs to be collaborative and dynamic to support these new behaviors and trends. So today, I've invited 2 experts to talk about their experiences. We've got Bertie van Wyk. He's a global insight manager at Herman Miller. I like to call him a futurist. We've had Bertie on many times and we always enjoy him. Good morning, Bertie. And we've got Guy Parks. Guy's a partner at Vale Williams with 30 years experience in commercial property. Good morning, Guy.
Morning.
Great. So over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be discussing the question, can you afford not to go hybrid? If you've got any questions during the session, don't hesitate, just pop them in the Q&A box. We'll try and answer them later. Anything that comes to mind, just get it in there. So I put together some really key questions to pose firstly to Guy and then to Bertie. So right now, the same question to both of you. There are lots of definitions of hybrid working, and they're fascinating. But I'm going to ask Guy first. What is your definition of the term hybrid working? Over to you, Guy.
Thanks very much, Cyril. That's great. I'm in my one-person office hybrid cell here, padded. Nobody can hear me scream, but it's working really well for us. We've just moved offices, so we are sort of trying to emulate what is the future here. So I consulted the Wizard of Oz, which is these days Google, and hybrid working is a flexible working model where employers work partly in a physical workplace and partly remotely at home or from another workspace. But that's pretty one-dimensional, I'd say. So what you need to do is break that down, and we've come up with sort of 4 grades of hybrid working, just listening to what our clients are telling us, companies who were helping with their strategies. So if you could just put on a slide, Lee. So we've segmented it into sort of 4 areas here. So workplace based within a limit with limited home working. That's a physical office where everybody goes in, they have all their meetings, their training sessions, their work is distributed from that location. And employees who aren't in may miss out on corporate culture, real-time contribution, and decision-making. Question. Then we have workplace-based with a generous working from home policy. And this, I think, is probably being more common of recent. Work revolves around the physical environment, and tasks are briefed and launched from the office. But employees can work from home. They can take their work home. They can work a set number of days a week. Then we have digital first with the workplace. So this is where collaboration, productivity, and culture mainly delivered by digital tools. Can be anywhere in the world. The norm is working from home. The exception is working at the workplace, but there is a mothership where everybody goes back to. And can have training sessions or collaborate if they wish. Digital first is the other extreme, where everything is done digitally. It has to rely on a very good tech-based culture, and everything is distributed to the workforce virtually. There's no permanent workplace, although the office could be rented out, serviced office now and again. Tech, as I say, is the top, got to be top of the range. It's got to work. Colleagues may not work in together very often face to face, and so there has to be a good management structure. And then you hear about Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. There isn't an acronym, but I'm not going to say it because it may offend. But there's also talk about flexible working, and we have Bell Williams Smart Working, which is about working where you perform best for you, your peers, and your clients as a team. I've got just another slide here. Just read this, and I'll sort of talk over it. But this is maybe one of the Apple sort of experiences. When working from home, employees want proof that employees are performing their work as expected. And so employees will want a straightforward way to also demonstrate to their employers the amount of hard work they're doing on work and assignments and telecommunicating. So there are software packages like Clockify, which look at your keystrokes. They're open so that you can see you there and then in your work environment via an open Zoom channel. Most people say that this is very distracting and not really true to the real world. So that's kind of what our take is on it at the moment. Back to you.
Thanks, Guy. That's good. So same question for you, Bertie. What's your definition of hybrid working? Give us an overview.
Give you my overview, but Guy, that last slide sounded absolutely terrifying. Someone tracking your keystrokes. Seriously, that really sounds quite terrifying to me. So hopefully that's not where we'll end up. The best way that I can simplify it is to just take one little step back. When we talk about distributed work and distributed workplaces. So distributed work is us being able to do our work synchronously like we are now at the same time. and then being able to do it asynchronously. So being able to work on something or work on a document that suits your best time, not all be online or in person at exactly the same time all the time, but giving people that flexibility. That's the kind of your distributed work. Separate to that, we get distributed workplaces, of which hybrid is a strategy. And my simplified kind of version, of which Guy kind of probably expanded on a little bit more, is the fact that you get remote first strategies, as in 5 days a week working remotely, not in the office at all at any point. The other extreme, of which you get about 5% of organizations, the other extreme is office first strategy, which a lot of organizations actually follow that strategy right now, but that's 5 days a week in the office, not 1 day a week at home or 1 day every 2 weeks at home. Everything in between, that is a hybrid strategy. And that is different for every organization. And I think the popularity of the kind of hybrid strategy for most is just kind of a move away from the strategic or the classic 9 to 5 every day being in the office. So the move in between, that's what we see as a hybrid strategy.
Thank you, buddy. That's great. So, question for Guy. Obviously, we're all talking about the seismic changes in the way that we work and where we work. The question is, therefore, can we predict future drivers of office demand and the factors that are shaping corporate real estate decisions? How would you answer that, Guy?
Yeah, we've been asked this question a lot, particularly when the pandemic first started. And we were reporting as sort of, can we draw conclusions? And as you said at the beginning of this talk, Cyril, been around for sort of 30 years and seen four upturns and downturns. And I've got a graph here actually, which sort of shows you kind of how the property market performs, and the bottom line is take up, so how much demand there is and how that falls away after a shock, and the top line is rents, which surprisingly robust over that period. So every 10 years we see there's a shock. It's not has to happen every 10 years, but it just generally does. There's a correction. So in 2001, there was the Y2K millennium bug, where everybody bought a lot of tech, and having bought that tech, they didn't need any more tech. And so those companies who were growing phenomenally fast found that their sales dropped. As a result, there was a global crash. And this sort of coincided with a time when manufacturing was moving more towards service industries and people moving out of factory-based work to more office-based work. So there was a move towards big floor plates, and that meant to move towards business parks, because they were the only places at the time which were providing lots of land to be developed on with big floors. So we saw that develop as a theme up until about 2008, when there was the financial crisis. Then cost affordance became a very key driving factor. People started to increase the densities of their office space, cramming them into more space. We saw ratios of sort of 1 person to 6 square meters, which may sound like a lot, but you've got to include all your circulation space in that, and amenity space. So it was getting quite hot and sweaty in those environments. And so as a result, companies started to put in sort of amenities, and you saw the foosball tables and snooker and the like, and just extracurricular stuff around that. And that sort of meant that people started to gravitate towards the town centres, and that was where all the shops and amenities were in what was an exciting environment. Then we roll on to Brexit. I know it feels like a distant memory, but still hangs over us. And we are hopefully to see some benefits. So there was then a technological update. People started to take a defensive position more, and they looked short term. They were a bit cautious about life. There was a reduction in the amount of floor space they had. And then coinciding with the pandemic, people became even more uncertain of the future. So they started to take out much shorter leases, go to serviced offices. And that was, and that created a much more sort of agile home working hybrid environment just by virtue of that. Car became king. Accessibility was really key. So now you're seeing offices in demand on business parks, which are right on motorway junctions, really accessible, and also right next to stations, which are really accessible to public transport. Everything in between is a challenge, I would say. And take up is just, you see the spike is starting to happen after pandemic. There was a bounce back where people just needed to make decisions, having pushed their lease events out for 2 years. They needed to find some sort of home to come together with. So that's where that happened. And then we're sort of seeing an increasing demand now as big corporates start to make decisions. Just thought it'd be interesting to see what the future holds.
Thanks, Guy. While we're on the subject of corporate estate, let's ask you another question. Obviously, you and Vale Williams act for a large number of occupiers, lots of different sizes of business. What are the requests coming through from these employers per sector or per size? Is there a common theme there, or is it one size fits all?
Sorry, Cyril, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I just quickly comment on previous questions when we're looking at kind of trying to predict the future drivers?
Yeah.
Like, for the record, even pre-pandemic, alarm bells should have been going off, because occupancy rates were never what whoever in leadership was, what the reality actually was. So it was less than 50%, in many cases 30, or even 20%. And people think that their offices were full. So when we look at trying to create predictions, there's a different understanding of what spaces should be delivering now. And depending on the organization, sizes could vary quite dramatically in what they are being used for too. When we start looking at future predictions, in 2006, we had a prediction from the Government Foresight Committee around what happens if a global pandemic hits. And we had the answers for this is how you plan, and this is how you think, how you need to be thinking in the future. But there are many factors which we actually try and predict to give you an accurate idea of this is where things are going. Nothing is going to be completely future-proof, but we want to give you all the scenarios so that you are future ready, for you to be able to get the right space and adapt it to the way you need. So sorry, I just want to quickly...
No, I agree with you, Bertie. I mean, even pre-pandemic, we were finding that most offices were only occupied 40, 45% at the time. Exactly. 50% was really high, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah. And everybody wanted a car parking space.
Yeah, that's always the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
So just coming back to that question to Guy, then, are there different requirements by employees for different sectors or different size of businesses? Is there a common theme there, Guy?
Yeah, no, there isn't. A common theme is the answer, because the corporates are looking at it very differently to the small to medium-sized companies, as are the public sector. So it's quite polarizing, in fact. And you've got the likes of the big corporates who are being very nervous about what they say to employees about coming back to the office. I know that in the States, it's really difficult to get people back at the moment. There's a lot of legal requirements which need to be followed in bringing people back into whether it's a safe or unsafe environment, and what people's liberties are. And so I know that's we're seeing that with our international clients who are taking much longer to make any sort of decision. They're just getting back into a rhythm. They may be in sort of 1 day a week if they're going back to their large offices, and they are certainly looking at consolidation exercises and campus arrangements. You've then got the small to medium-sized companies who are pretty fleet of foot, who are doing a combination of moving to serviced offices short-term or extending their leases out short-term, but planning to see what comes next. I said they're only just starting to get back into rhythm, but we're seeing more people in those offices. I'm in a multi-let building here in central Reading, and as I've gradually walked in, certainly since Easter time, I've noticed, I should be taking photographs of this and sort of document it at the end of the year, that there are more people at the desks. It's all sort of like a fishbowl. You see everybody in. Public sector, well, you see, actually, I've got to find this. Show, if you can put up next slide. Yeah, so here we've got public sector. Jacob Rees-Mogg, much more of a stick than a carrot. You know, I came to see you, you weren't in, it'd be nice to see you back at the office. The intimation being is that, why are you here? There's a lot of polarization. So you're seeing that law firms are saying that, you know, staff can come back to work, but, you know, they were compensated for going into London and for all that waiting. And now, you know, should they be getting 20%? Brits are saying, returning to the office, great, you know, like being with my colleague, collaborating. These were my friends. Nice to be back. We don't want to know about the civil service. Next one. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research going on about productivity in the workplace now, and virtual meetings make creative problem solving harder. There needs to be more innovation. Productivity at home not as good as at work, etc. So there's a lot of research going on. I've got another slide. So what you can't ignore really is that 37% post-pandemic want in-person working. But then again, 52% want a hybrid style workplace. And so, you know, people need to adapt. And I know that one study by Accenture found that 58% of respondents had already been in a hybrid workplace during pandemic. And these people reported much better mental health, stronger working relationships with their peers, less burnout than being entirely on site or entirely at home. So there does seem to be a benefit from a productivity perspective and health and well-being by having both a sort of a hybrid, agile working environment. And that's what people are saying, and we're making plans with all of these organisations to help suit what's best for them. But can I just say, what you can't do is say, oh, we're adopting a hybrid working policy, go and work from home for a bit and work from the office for a bit. There has to be a protocol, or else it'll be an absolute disaster, because expectations will be different for different people, for not only your peers, but also your employers, and you'll get a lot of resentment. That's what we've found by speaking to organisations. Back to you.
Thanks, Guy. I agree with that. Protocols are necessary. And that leads us really nicely on to the next question for Bertie is, you know, you've got, what do employers want from a hybrid office? And conversely, what do employees want from a hybrid office? Those two perspectives. What do you say about that, Bertie?
There's a really, really good questions. We have got some incredible data on this. We, as Simon Miller and Miller Knoll, are part of the Future Forum. And what we do is we engage 10,000 knowledge workers from all around the world every quarter. So every 3 months, we get information back from executives, the C-suites, from employees, to get a real idea of what they're experiencing right now and what they are predicting for the future. And the number that we're seeing actually from the C-suite, from the executives at the top, 44% of these leadership teams, these leaders want to be back in the office full-time 5 days a week, whereas only 17% of non-C-suite, so your average kind of employees, want to be back in the office 5 days a week, which means there's a pretty drastic shift. In the last 3 months, we've also seen globally around 34 to 35% of staff, of non-C-suite staff, non-leadership staff, are already back in the office 5 days a week, which has also coincided with the lowest well-being figures we have ever seen. And we would love to delve deeper on that, but I don't have that actual data. But the real thing here is for employers, and if you're an employer now, if you're listening to this, if you're online, is you need to answer the major question of why. Why do you want employees back into your office? And if the answer is, well, the office is a little bit empty on a Friday, it's not good enough. That is not a good enough answer. So the real thing here is to understand and explain the reason why you want employees back into the office if you want to run a hybrid model, and get your leadership teams and everyone in your organization to buy into, this is the reason, this is why we're better together, this is why we're inviting you along to join our hybrid strategy. So you have to get the why absolutely right, clear, completely communicated throughout the organization, because realistically, the numbers are quite terrifying around this, where we say, from this pulse survey that we have, is we know that if you don't have a clear and concise strategy, people in that organization, or maybe even in your organization, are 3 times as likely to be actively looking for a new job right now, at this very, very moment. So being clear and concise that this is what our strategy is, this is why we want you back in, this is how you can work, is extremely important, having those clear answers. And the reason is, from this report, is that 76% of employees want to be able to choose where they work. So it's really, really important that you remember that your very best staff, 76% of them, they want that choice. For some, it's just giving them the choice, and then they might still choose to be in that environment 5 times a week because of different home situations. But the other point to remember on this is 94% of knowledge workers all around the world want flexibility in when they are working. And that's really important to take on board too. If I could do my emails at home for an hour, skip the commute, then go into the office, how much better is that? But the one thing that we have to remember around running a hybrid strategy is that most companies you see right now, most organizations don't have a hybrid office. My boss, Ryan Anderson, said this too. We have pandemic offices. This is just offices coping with the strategy, but they aren't designed. They aren't right. They don't know how to deal with the noise level. They don't know how to get teams to connect together. They create silos. So the spaces that we create also have got some serious issues that all need to be adapt and actually change. So that's where we're at.
Thanks, Bertie. I've got another question for you. It's really interesting what you're saying about that massive amount of data that Herman Miller have got. Tell us about what that data tells us about the future of hybrid working. So we're kind of in a transition at the moment. What do you think about the future?
We understand that hybrid is going to be the preferred choice for most organizations. That's what the data is telling us, say above 70. And Guy, you just showed us a great statistic showing from McKinsey, showing pretty much the exact same numbers that most organizations will lean to that. Just on the record, some have remote first strategies, which is fine, and some have office first strategy, which for some organizations is absolutely fine. But for most, they will follow that hybrid strategy. And there's really good reason to follow that. It creates more equitable experiences, it's more inclusive. But the thing to understand here is, when we look at the future, is we have to understand why we're going to have, what an office should actually deliver. And there's 3 key things that these spaces need to deliver. Because if you look at the Leesman Index, globally, the average experience for someone working from home is better than the average experience for someone working in an office. So the offices we have are not delivering what they should. So the big question is, so what should they do? What should a great space be able to deliver? And there's these 3 key things. We talk about community socialization. When the pandemic ended, these spaces became very, very popular, a space where everyone has a chance to bump into everyone else. We talk about our weak ties and our strong ties. So strong ties is your immediate team, great relationships. You understood who they are and learned more about them in the pandemic than anyone else. But those weak ties, someone in customer care, someone in finance, someone in logistics, those people you bump into that improves your experience of working in that environment, that's going to be really, really important. So your office, your space will be the driver for people to choose to come and work in that environment. The other thing it needs to be able to deliver is intensive team collaboration. So we know from all our research around the world that if one person in the team says they're going to go in and you're running a hybrid strategy, everyone else in that team is going to go, oh, I'm going to go in. It's like going to a party. You don't want to go if you don't know anyone else. But if you know one person, then they go in and then another person goes in. So you're going to need spaces for larger immersive team activities with more analog tools, whiteboards, where you can engage with everyone, but the whole team should be easily be able to get together, not siloed away from everyone else, but more kind of like open neighborhoods where you can sit wherever you want, but you kind of know those teams will all be kind of together when you start the day. And then last but not least, and this is where a lot of organizations really struggle or get this wrong. When we go into an office, it's not purely for collaborative work. You don't collaborate for 9 hours in a day. You might collaborate for 3, maybe, heaven forbid, even 4 hours or 5 hours in a day, but the rest of the time, you want to do what you're being paid to do, what your job title is, head down, individual focus work. And if you're unable to do a head down focus work, say just call that side of the office, that's a library area, which means no one has a video call, no one has things. If you're unable to concentrate, and I'm at any point, I have to choose, do I go to an office or do I stay at home? I'm going to choose to stay at home. If I feel for 1 second I won't be productive or I won't get the work done that I'm being evaluated on, I'm not going to go in. So the environments that we create directly will impact how well your hybrid strategy works. You can have all the best intentions, but if the environment doesn't allow me to do my work, guess what? I'm going to choose to stay home. So that's the thing, that the spaces that we create, they all need to improve quite dramatically.
Great. Thanks, buddy.
Yes.
So that leads on really well to a question for Guy, which is, obviously, Bertie's been talking about how the workplace needs to change to adapt to hybrid. How is the real estate market changing to adapt to these new demands in the workplace? And how are landlords adapting to accommodate hybrid styles, Guy? Help us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. And just picking up on the Leaseman piece, there's always the question, so I'm much more productive working from home, but Leaseman do this survey and they cover sort of 25 work aspects, from not only sort of collaboration, which, yes, you're not going to spend 9 hours doing that, but sort of maintaining the corporate culture, feeling connected in your workplace. What else there? There's sort of brand engagement, sort of building relationships, innovation, those water cooler moments, all that sort of stuff, which, you know, are better in a sort of a place where you can congregate and meet each other. And they don't all happen. You don't sort of think about them, well, I'm going to go in and collaborate. You go in and you're in a place and you think of all these other different aspects you need to touch upon. So, you know, it's not, I'm more productive. It's, you know, great, we're a team, I think is what's coming out from all of this. And hybrid working, yes, it is transforming the way that people look in the office, not only occupiers or companies, but also landlords. Can you just flip up this is really helpful, I think, because what we're seeing is that occupiers are looking for a much more engaging, exciting place to go, because actually people have measured their workplace from their homes, and in many cases their homes are much better than the workplace. In many cases they aren't, and in which case then the offices need to support them more. So, you know, we're looking at workplaces which I call sort of Disneyland places, where, you know, you really do want to excited to get up and go and see people and be there. So they've got, you know, great shower facilities. So if you want to cycle there, you can go in there, like gyms, in that you've got changing rooms, hair dryers, the lot. It's really, really smart. You can sort of meet new people there, go to gym sessions if you want. They are very green and sustainable. And people, we now have buildings with apps which are AI enabled, and sensors to monitor occupancy and air quality, and if there's too many people in an area, sort of alarms go off in that will tell you that, you know, look, maybe you want to sort of spread out a bit, or you want to pump more air in. Ultra fast broadband, and this is coming directly from landlords now, who are looking at the backbone of a building and fitting in the Wi-Fi before people move in, so that they can basically plug in and play. They're much higher quality environments, much more controllable. in that, if you're in a car, you can control your comfort cooling for your side of the car compared to your neighbours. In offices today, that hasn't happened, but apps are now available to enable you to do that. There are much more breakout areas than desking in some cases, to enable people to have just different pockets to go and sit in or stand in, and work. Yesterday I worked in our breakout area from a chair, just with my laptop on my knee, because that's sometimes how I do it at home. I just felt comfortable doing that, then dived into a formal meeting. So green credentials, really important, sustainability, recycling buildings. So a lot of landlords are looking at taking back buildings, which are maybe older buildings, and rather than knocking them down, they're recycling, and even recycling the fit out that are already in the buildings. So you're embedding the carbon in, and that's what employees and employers are telling us that they're looking for. Accessibility seems to be the number one thing at the moment. So, as I said, being at a motorway junction, or if you're not accessible enough at a building, putting on minibuses, scooters. I've seen stand-up paddle boards on business parks, which you can hire, and canoes, which you can then go down from the outlining business parks in Reading out into the town centre. Truly flexible, exciting space which really sort of illustrate the brand values and create a culture. And so it's landlords are listening and pivoting quite quickly, actually. And we're seeing a strive to quality. So we've got very good quality buildings are being taken up. And people can afford them, which are generally higher rents because they're downsizing. So they're keeping their budgets the same, but they are taking less space. So they have more money to spend globally on space, and better space for their employees and for the business to bring visitors back to as well. That's generally what we're seeing, and it is happening quite fast.
Fascinating, Guy. Thank you. Just a reminder for all those on the call, if you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A box. We're moving on. I've noticed the word collaboration comes up so many times when we're talking about hybrid. So Bertie, could you just give us a feel, what do we need to do to adapt our workplaces, particularly digitally, to encourage and support collaboration?
Really fantastic question. I think the master around this for me is this organizational sociologist called Andreas Hofbauer, which basically looks at the disconnect between the fabric that connects all of us and our culture within an organization that leads to also great collaboration. And he speaks about these three types of interventions that you can implement or think about to try and ensure that you improve all of those elements. So first off, it is, there's a disconnect between people that have been working far away from their offices and their organizations. So there's a disconnect between me and my organization. So what can we, the first thing to think of is what were the biggest moments that you felt super well connected in your organization? What were those key moments? And then what you do is you ask your organization, ask your people, what were the really great moments where you felt super connected, when you collaborated very well? And then you try and mimic and ensure that those moments happen again, and you plan for those moments. The other thing that's happening is a thinning of the cross-cutting ties that bind different areas of our organizations together. And with this is what you can do is you can look at what groups and what functions and what teams and what regions are either kind of weakly tied or not tied at all. And then you create a process to ensure that they actually connect with each other. And our organization, we have every 2 weeks, something pops up. We've got a pretty large strategy team. And it asks, do you want to connect with a senior leader or a team in your larger organization for a 30-minute coffee chat? And you can either say yes or no. And it sets up a call. And I had a call with our VP last week, and it was fantastic. We had a super debate. We got another call set up because we just came up with another idea, and I felt more connected with the organization. It really improved the way I think and feel about my company. So you can actually plan for these things. And then we know that collaboration is something that's really being struggled with right now. And the main thing around this is that Andreas Hofbauer mentioned is the most innovative and connected organizations, what they do is they create temporary incubators. Because currently you go back into an office and guess what? It's quite siloed. That team doesn't talk to that team doesn't talk to that team. And what you do is you just dedicate that side of the space for the next 2 weeks. We want those 3 different types of teams or departments to be able to work in that space. And you put all your documents up, you put all your information up so that people can connect and talk to each other and grow and learn from each other in a really nice, better way. So this incubators is a really great way and a simple way for people to collaborate significantly better, learn with each other, and of course, connect even more with your organization.
Great. Another question I've got for you, Bertie. This is a big subject, isn't it? Diversity, inclusivity.
Yeah.
It's become perhaps, it's so important, especially since the pandemic.
Yeah.
There's so many areas where we're not doing enough to encourage people back into the workplace. And how could a hybrid solution help with inclusivity, diversity? And I'm thinking particularly, you and I were talking about this the other day, about in getting women who have been out of work back into the workplace.
The real number here is, I've got the US figures, 3 million working mothers climbed out of the world of work post-pandemic, which is absolutely terrifying. And that instantly makes it less inclusive, instantly make it less diverse. When you run a hybrid strategy, you could have coped around that. You could make it easier for someone with caregiving responsibilities. Someone that's been working from home that hasn't been paid, that hasn't had to pay for someone to look after a child, now forcing them to go back to work for 5 days a week. Now they have to pay for caregiving responsibilities. It's not being very inclusive. So a hybrid strategy really allows for you to treat the person like an individual. Another great speaker on this is a lady called Kate Usher that talks about menopause in the workplace, which we don't talk enough about. And 10% of women going through menopause actually leaves the office because the management and the space that they're in isn't conducive for them to be able to feel better in different types of environments. So a hybrid strategy is fantastic to be more inclusive for people to be able to choose where they can work with all the other responsibilities that they have. But when we provide choice, we need to provide great choices. So even the office environment that we go back into needs to give you loads of variation and choice. For people with different sensory needs, there's too light in here, it's too dark in here. It's too hot there, I can go sit over there where it's a little bit cooler. It's too noisy here, it's really distracting me with my sensory needs. I can go sit somewhere else where it's quieter. When we provide those variety and choices, it really improves the experience of I'm happy to go back in because I know I'm going to be able to feel the way I need to feel to be able to get my work done and feel like a great human being. We look at 3 key lenses with that. We look at beyond kind of barrier free. So the physical barriers and non-physical barriers. So simple thing like nursing, great nursing rooms where breastfeeding mothers can have a fridge with the milk in and they have a separate space to do that. Loads of additional elements. You shouldn't have to lean over a massive desk to plug in an HDMI cable. That's not inclusive. A simple thing like a standing height table, if it doesn't have a privacy screen, if I'm wearing a dress, I can't actually use that environment and I just go sit somewhere else. We know the people we feel before we think. We have different sensory needs. More variety helps me if I'm a little bit visually impaired, to be able to sit in a place where I know I'm going to be feel a bit better, using colors to be able to create contrast, and then empowering experiences, as I mentioned, creating those 3 spaces. Community socialization means I can connect with others in the way that I want or choose not to, sit in the outskirts. Better team collaboration spaces, and then great individual focus spaces just allows you to feel more included when you need to, but also when I need to be separate, I have that choice available to me.
Just click on something there, Bertie, because some of these things for a small to medium organisation, sort of creating nursery rooms, prayer rooms, and things like that, are going to be very difficult. So we are seeing that landlords are providing that in larger buildings to be more inclusive and equitable, and because financially is maybe not financially viable for a smaller organisation to organise that or put it in place. There are simple things they can do, but therefore landlords are providing this. And we're seeing something called resi commercial as a word, whereby people feel that they're as comfortable in the office as they are at home, and it's trying to merge those two environments. We're also hearing about corporatality, whereby landlords are putting on events to bring people together, not only in that one organisation, but in the whole throughout the whole building. So you've got sort of chances to meet people, collaborate with other organisations as well. So this is all being facilitated, and we're on a journey, but we've got further to go.
Absolutely.
This is a great conversation. I really like this. We've got a question come in on the chat. Perhaps I'll put this one through to you, Bertie. It's, how do you apply incubators to remote teams?
Oh yeah, that can be a very, very difficult one. It's very difficult, plain and simply. The thing is, when you want people to come together for an ideation session, you really want to do that in person. There are quite a lot of digital tools available to do that. There's Miro, where you can see other people work on the same thing at the same time as you. You can have conversations, you can build, you can grow. The asynchronous tools around that is very important. But if you want an immersive incubator, in person is by far the best. That's when you're going to be able to see other people's content and see the way other things work. We actually have some of these, because we're a very large organization, have some online sessions where we try and run these kind of incubators too, where it's 2-day sessions, it's 4 hours in a day, and we use those boards available. We all work on the same idea. We get everyone involved. We have a team of people that run the process. You've got homework to do beforehand, and then you get a much better idea of what other teams are working on to try and actually share more ideas. We can be quite successful, but of course it can be significantly better that those conversations you have offline, after a meeting, before a meeting, in the environments that you go into, you just miss out on. It's nice. There's loads of tools to try and copy this digitally, but there's nothing really that beats the thing in person. But there are tools available.
Yeah, I can endorse Miraboard. That is a really great whiteboarding tool, post-it notes, and you can have people from all over the world joining a session. You do feel quite immersed in that experience, but there's nothing like the face-to-face, as you say. Sorry, Guy, you were going to say something.
No, I was pretty much going to echo that. And it's a chance meeting. So it's just sort of having lots of breakout areas where you have those water cooler moments, even sort of spaces outside your main office area. I was in the atrium here in our office 2 days ago. A client just happened to walk in. I hadn't seen for about 10 years. And what are you doing here? Oh, I'm just thinking about sort of moving to Reading. All right. Do you need a hand with that? Yeah, fine. Without talking, we're doing something together and we're helping them. So it's just those chance meetings. It's very difficult to emulate virtually.
Yeah. So another question has just come in. Maybe I'll direct this one to you, Guy. The question is, we have all the bells and whistles, free coffee, breakout spaces, drinks on Thursday, etc. But then people only want to come in on those days. How do we get an even spread of attendance, I reckon, though they're meaning, across the working week? Have you got any golden ideas about that?
Really, really, really good question. And you either have a really strong policy and you're telling people that it'd be really great for you to be in on certain days so that they know when to be in. But yeah, you're right. I mean, on Mondays and Fridays, there aren't that many people around, and it's just sort of creating an environment. So it's just about the people part of it all and the culture and wanting to be with your peers and learning from it. And what I find is that the younger members of our teams want to be in more often than others, because they're learning and they are wanting to be there for when the instant work comes in. They're there to be sort of allocated that maybe. And some people might then feel that they're missing out and it's not fair, but that they feel that they're climbing a tree, or they're on a journey, and they want to be in the office. So I do find that the younger members of the teams, certainly under 30s, are in pretty much all the time, at least 4 to 5 days a week now. And they come to me and say, look, Guy, I need to see my peers or my leaders, because I'm not learning as much as I feel I want to, and I want to accelerate my program. So I don't have a golden nugget to say that, if you offer candy or whatever, they're going to come in more often. But it's just creating that great environment. And, I talked about the office that's in Reading, that's just got stand-up paddle boards and things like that. So people and scooters, and just trying new things out, just making it as immersive as possible. They have, there's also cinema screens, things like that, which you can sort of go to. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't, it's all fun. There's got to be some work time, but it's the spaces in between.
Yeah. One of the sorry,
can I quickly just add that? I would like to challenge the question back. Is think about the why.
Right.
Why do you want the Friday to be very busy when a lot of people feel that they might? Is it the leadership? Is it just because it looks a little bit empty? Our spaces are busy kind of all the time because it's a great space. It doesn't have tons of amenities in it. It's an awesome space to go into. We all like going in. If you really want to try and see, you want the Fridays to be a bit busier, lead by example. Get your leadership team in and say, okay, you're going to be in on Fridays, and we're going to give your time to other team members to have one-on-one sessions with you so they can grow and they can learn and they can understand more about the business. So you're going to have 5 sections of 30 minutes with 5 separate employees who can choose to come and have a one-on-one chat with you. And if they then want to come in on a Friday, then you're on a winner, and then everybody wins. But if they don't want to come in, then challenge again. Why? Why do you want people to come in on a Friday if you are not even willing to come in on a Friday? So that's what I would move away from providing 2 kind of amenities and attractions. The space needs to be really good for people to be able to get the work done that they're being paid to do. Again, most spaces aren't, and I'm saying most spaces. And if I cannot get my fixed work done and it's Friday and I have to jump on the train to come into work and you're forcing me to be there at 9, it's going to be a challenge. I might even look to work somewhere else. So being flexible around that, come in at 10, come in at 11, as long as you get the work done, more people will actually engage.
Yeah, that's great. Well, look, I think we're just about, time's just about up, and it's been a fascinating debate. Thank you very much indeed, Bertie. Thank you very much, Guy, for your contributions. Really, really appreciated. We'll leave it there, and thank you all for attending.